Hot topic of the day here on Monday morning on the morning kick around. Should an MLS team go after Paul Pogba?
Ooh, yeah. We brought this up obviously in long balls there. The idea that an MLS team, and I'll admit that we're talking about this because Pogba being available puts it out there in the ether. But I did see a tweet on X or a post on X or an Elon on X or whatever it's called from
An
Matt Doyle.
excretion, I
An
heard. I like that.
excretion. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, remember, this is a pool that Elon has, and it's pretty dirty. Things are defecating in that pool all over the place. But Matt Doyle did not do that. He said, I understand that this is a player who has lots of problems, and he's coming off a long layoff, and there are lots of red flags here when it comes to maybe signing Paul Pogba. But what you can say is the guy is extremely talented, and Matt was imagining him running the show for Atlanta United, who is obviously in a moment of transition. And that got me thinking, okay, let's just go up a level. Should an MLS team even take a crack at Paul Pogba? And then it becomes, okay, which MLS teams might be best suited to give Paul Pogba the platform he needs to thrive again? And those are big questions, Robert.
Yeah, players who have had time off have come to MLS and revived their career. I think the proof of concept for something like this will be Zlatan. Granted, the situation isn't exactly the same, but Zlatan Ibrahimovic was trying to revive himself after a long layoff and a significant injury. He
Yep.
went to the Galaxy, had
Yep.
obviously, big success individually, earned himself a ticket back to European football. But Pogba, I mean, maybe he wants to follow in the steps of his brother Florentine and go to Atlanta United. You think they'd need, a very strong-willed coach that could really manage him, as I'm sure he might have confidence issues just within himself, but also the outside
Sure.
noise has to be managed as well.
I mean, look, you do need the right manager. You need the right structure even above the managerial position. If we talk about the sort of the inception question of whether or not Pogba would be a worthwhile target for an MLS team, my gut says yes. Like my gut says yes, go for it because look, MLS is a unique place. The spotlight is different, Robert. And while I think Paul Pogba is absolutely a famous name within soccer circles, I don't think he crosses over too much here in the U.S. I'm sure Zlatan did at the time, but Zlatan obviously is a force of personality that makes him unique. I'm not sure that that's Pogba. So what you might get is a player who doesn't have to deal with the scrutiny day to day. Now there will be some interest and clearly there'll be some reporters on the story and who knows what tabloids from England will send over some bloke to cover Pogba playing in America, but it won't be the same. Right? He won't have to deal with walking down the street and having people point at him and say, "Oh, that's Paul Pogba. He got banned for 4 years for doping." Like that's not going to be a thing. There are some cities where the pressure to perform is higher, but let's not pretend that any of it measures up to Turin or to Manchester or anywhere else that Pogba's played before. So I think that might be a good thing for him. I mean, I've argued in the past that MLS should go after a guy like Mario Balotelli. Now, Mario's got his own issues or had his own issues, and
Would it be fun?
I always thought it would be for me. It was like the chaos thing. Like Mario Balotelli is an agent of chaos, and I like that about him. It's fun for me to think about Mario Balotelli in America. Pogba's not quite that guy, even though his life is messy on and off the field. I don't think he's that guy, man. And just think about what he did for France in 2018, and how good he's been at moments in his career for club and country. And if he can even get back to three-quarters of that in Major League Soccer, I mean, we're talking about Ricky Puig with more athleticism, more size, more strength, more everything. And I'm not Ricky Puig has been a massive hit in Los Angeles. So if you can get Pogba in and have him fill that kind of role, it could be pretty magical.
Do you think Pogba would be the type of player that would require to be at one of like the hotspot cities in America? Would he have to be in a New York, an LA, or a Miami to
It's
consider
a
it, you think?
good question. Obviously, European players are attracted to the big name cities, the marquee towns. Offense to Columbus and I guess
Nashville.
Denver's. I love Denver, but Denver's probably on the list. Nashville's on the list. I mean, let's be Austin, who now needs a coach. I probably would end up. I mean, I would take a run at him regardless if I was a general manager and I had cap space. I mean, there is a question of whether or not he would have to be a DP at this point. He hasn't played in a year. He's been banned. He has damaged goods. Are you getting him at a discount? If you can get him at a massive discount, then it's absolutely worth at least kicking the tires on it. And then there's no reason not to reach out. If you're now, we know MLS. Is he on a discovery list somewhere? Who's got the rights to Paul Pogba? It's stupid MLS stuff. But I think you could probably negotiate that. I wonder, Montreal did, they brought in a big name French speaking player in the past in Didier Drogba. Maybe Paul Pogba in Montreal makes some sense. But I do think that you asked a good question. What team has the structure? What team has the adults in the room? I would say to handle this. I don't think that's Montreal. I could see it in Atlanta, even though Atlanta's going through this transition, and even though they're looking for a head coach and they've got lots of questions in front of them. I would say Garth Lagerwey is almost a perfect manager for a guy like or a general manager rather for a guy like Paul Pogba. And I know that's not his role; he's the president in Atlanta, but I could see that work. I could see that working out. Now, the thing about Garth Lagerwey though is he's never really gone out and spent big money on a big name player. I mean, that's not really been his history, Seattle or Atlanta so far. I mean, they spent some money, they spent some money on the guy who loves hip hop. My mind blanking on his name. They signed a player who they spent a bunch of money on. It was a lot of money for Atlanta United, certainly, or a lot of money for an MLS team. This is not the same. Again, you're probably not spending. He's a free agent. You're not going to spend money on a transfer fee. What his salary will be is an open question, but I think it's more about his notoriety, as you said, Robert. So if is it LA, New York, are those teams, any of those teams in those two cities ready for the Paul Pogba show? Are they going to get the most out of him? Then there's the question about a place like Atlanta. Could he be attracted to that based on maybe what his brothers told him? Certainly they play in front of big crowds when they're good. There is something to be said for that. Outside of that, man, everything else is kind of like really dicey. Chicago, I mean, I'm always going to pitch Chicago as a place that big name players should go to, but they've whiffed on or they whiffed recently on one of those. So I don't know. It is I want an MLS team to go after Paul Pogba, but I can't tell you that it's a perfect fit.
One team that kind of comes to mind as we're playing with the idea of Paul Pogba coming to Major League Soccer is he's got two French teammates on an MLS team already. LAFC, he could join the likes of Olivier Giroud.
Yeah.
And the goalkeeper, Hugo Lloris.
Yeah. Well, that's only if they don't get Antoine Griezmann maybe next summer, which I think is a possibility. Griezmann, still playing very well at Atleti, but retired it from international soccer. So, maybe there's something to that. I mean, if you're going to ask me, who do you want, Antoine Griezmann or Paul Pogba? I'm taking Griezmann. I'm not taking Pogba first. So
far less of a gamble, and it's still consistently performing. Yeah.
So if LAFC is going to go after one big name French player, then they're going to go after Griezmann. Maybe the Galaxy have space, and then we get Pogba on one side of town and Griezmann on the other, and make it a thing. I mean, for the show of it all, I would be into that for sure.
It would become Le Trafico.
Le trafic. I mean, la trafic. Something like that. Somebody can tell me what the word for traffic in French is. It's probably not that. I probably butchered it.
With the gamble that it would be to bring Pogba in, our MLS clubs have the flexibility to maybe backload it, like, give him a low base salary, and then if it works out, reward him on achievement.
Yeah, I mean, incentive laden contracts. I mean, I don't know that there are incentive laden contracts in MLS on some level. I guess it's possible. I mean, yeah, like you said. I mean, there have been guys who have come to MLS, and their initial salary is a lot, but not crazy amounts of money, and then things are backloaded where they get a lot more money later on. Now, you take a risk as a club when you sign a contract like that, because if you don't get the value from the player, then you're stuck with the contract, or you've got to find some way to get out of the contract if and when he doesn't deliver. Sometimes the player and the team say, this isn't working out. Let's just cut ties. No money needs to change hands after this. But remember, Pogba's sat around and not played for a while. So if he signs a big contract and it just doesn't work out, is he going to really say, okay, yeah, I'm not going to take that money. I'm going to go back into the waters of Europe and look for a club that might take me? I mean, the thing about this with Pogba is there are so many distinct possibilities about where this could go. Now, I don't imagine my one of those doesn't feel like the possibility of him being a big time player for a Champions League winning level kind of team, right? We're not talking about he's not going to be a central player in an elite club again. At least I don't see that. At 31 years old, off this break, I don't see that. But could he find a nice soft place to land in Europe, in France? Sure. Could he, could he end up in MLS making a bunch of money and starring for a team in midfield? Absolutely, he could do that. Could I see a Mexican club giving him a flyer of a contract and maybe bringing him in? Yeah, sure. All those things are possible for a guy like Pogba.
I had a friend suggest maybe he could join Andy Carroll at Bordeaux in the fourth league in France, and
Wow.
help their reclamation
Did
project.
not know Andy Carroll was doing anything right now. Andy Carroll's doing what now? What is Andy
So
Carroll
so
doing?
so Bordeaux, they
Uh-huh.
had some sort of financial collapse, and they got moved down to the bottom league in France.
Okay. Okay.
And as a act of adventure, I suppose Andy Carroll has been traveling each week
Okay.
from his
All
home in
right.
England to
All
play for
right.
Bordeaux to help them move back up
Wow, that's
the French
interesting.
leagues.
That's interesting. Okay. I mean, maybe Paul Pogba gets involved in a Como-like project, right? They're in Serie A now after Seth Fabregas and some new investment helped them. Yeah, sure. Why not? He probably has enough money that if he wanted to go buy into a lower division team at this point, he absolutely could do that. And maybe it's a Wrexham, maybe it's a Como, maybe it's a Bordeaux, maybe it's something like that. That would be certainly fascinating from a storyline perspective. Now, again, selfishly, I want him to come play in America because I'd like to see, and if we can get Paul Pogba back to 3/4 of what he used to be, that would be fun to watch in MLS.
Nate in the chat had an interesting suggestion. I think this would be a real test of character for a new team and the player himself. San Diego, Pogba plus beach equals money, says Nate.
Yeah, well, look, you mentioned the managerial thing, and I do think it's important to have a manager that players like Pogba can respect. There are different levels of professionalism among players. Some players don't care; they're just going to come in, they're going to do what the boss says. Whatever the gaffer says, that's my job. There are other players who will probably have a look down their nose kind of approach, depending on who is telling them what to do. I'm not sure Mikey Veras, in his very first job as a head coach anywhere at the club level, makes sense as a guy that's supposed to wrangle Paul Pogba into shape. It just doesn't seem like a good fit to me. But maybe I'm underselling Mikey Veras and maybe I'm misjudging Paul Pogba.
I mean, it's an exciting prospect to have a big name as kind of like a banner name for your club debut, but it seems like if things don't go well at any point, it could really snowball there. I
Yes,
mean,
right.
like you said, Pogba's starting to get back in the swing of things, feeling good, doesn't agree with the decisions of the manager. You feel like him and his entourage, at least in the past, he has had a significant entourage.
Yes.
Don't know if he's changed those sort of patterns, but you think that you'd have a lot of voices saying, this guy doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, that's the thing. He is going to be, regardless of what his crossover appeal is in America, he will be a big fish in a small pond. That is absolutely a fact, and you do have to deal with that if you're whatever club decides to go after Pogba, if you want to bring him in. And if we went down this 29 MLS teams, soon to be 30 with San Diego, obviously, we went down the list, we can eliminate many, many, many of them just on the fact that it just wouldn't work out from that perspective. And like you said, like, is Paul Pogba going to willingly play in Kansas City? Probably not. In Salt Lake City, probably not. I've already mentioned Denver, and I love Denver, but no, probably not. Portland, probably not. Maybe Toronto, but that's not where Toronto's program is right now. And they've already got the big name players that they're trying to figure out how to wrestle into something coherent and cogent. So I don't know. It's a wild one.
Yeah, Toronto definitely has their overpaid, underperforming stars already locked in so far. Just kind of a final note on this is: do you think that you know, what could you compare? Like, I keep on coming back to like Michael Vick, someone who we thought would never come back.
Yeah.
Coming back, is there? Do you think there's a parallel of someone in soccer who's had this kind of a layoff and kind of out of nowhere been given a lifeline and succeeded with it?
In soccer, man, um, this long of a layoff, that I don't know. I can't think of a player who's had a ban. I mean, obviously Maradona had a ban. Um, that would, but his career, you can't compare Maradona to anybody, not just because of the talent, just because of how crazy his life was. I mean, even Pogba can't really, and Pogba again got blackmailed by family, and somehow still his life is less crazy than Diego Maradona's. I can't think of any. Certainly in modern football, I can't think of anybody who's been gone for a while. Everybody kind of gave up on him, and he's now supposed to come back and figure out a way back. And look, let's just say this as a matter of covering all of our bases. Paul Pogba can train in January. He's negotiating a deal to get out of his contract with Juve. I'm sure they don't want to pay him anymore. He can go play somewhere. He can start playing again in March. He's 31. There's no guarantee, depending on what options are on the table for him, that he's going to definitely come back and play. I mean, I think he probably will, but I don't know where that is yet. And until we kind of know what's out there in the marketplace for him, he may just say, okay, that's enough. I'm going to hang it up. And I'll go again. I'll invest in a Como or something.
All right, guys, let us know in the chat. Do you think that Paul Pogba, if he comes back, will be a force to be reckoned with again?
What MLS team should go after Paul Pogba, if any? Tell us right now. Tell us in the chat. Do that.